All right, so yesterday, Senator Bernard Sanders went head-to-head in a debate with Senator Lindsey Graham, and this was just absolutely amazing from top to bottom. I'm not sure exactly what sparked this off or what made them decide to do this in a moment like this, but nonetheless, we get to see Bernie Sanders at his absolute best in some of these clips that we're about to watch here. First, we're going to get into Lindsey Graham's opening statement, and then we'll get to Bernie Sanders' response to his opening statement, and you'll really just get a perfect glimpse into how, unsubstantive these types of statements from conservatives are right now, and then contrasting that to the actual legitimate identifying of the problems and proposing of actual substantive policy solutions that Bernie Sanders is putting forward here. So first, let's go ahead and jump into this Lindsey Graham clip.
Senator Graham.
Well, thank you very much. This is an awesome place. If you get in Boston, come see the place. I want to thank, we're here to honor Ted Kennedy, Orrin Hatcher were great friends. They fought like tigers, but they could work together. And I have a different take on things than Bernie, and we'll get through that here in a minute, but I like Bernie. Bernie's own message, I hear this every day, all the time, and he believes it. But I just want to remind you that the Democrats are in charge. After hearing Bernie talk, you would believe we're building a wall to keep people in, not out. Things are tough, but they're going to get better, right? And socialism is not the answer to all these problems. So I just want to remind you a little bit about where we're at. The Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the White House. All these problems that were talked about, they could change or fix if they could. Their agenda is not working.
Okay, but I mean, pause. You're talking to Bernie Sanders here. You're not talking to Nancy Pelosi. You're not talking to Chuck Schumer. You're not talking to Joe Biden. And those are the people that are leading the Democratic Party, along with the other corporate ghouls that make up the vast majority of Democrats right now. You have your extreme conservative outliers like Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, etc. But the bulk of the Democratic Party, especially in the Senate, is definitely to the right of Bernie Sanders on pretty much every single policy that he was mentioning in his opening statement. So, not exactly sure what you're trying to say here when you say Democrats are in power, as if that means that Bernie's proposed policy solutions wouldn't be effective. None of his policies have been implemented by the current Democratic Party. So, what are you talking about here? You're talking about the flaws of conservative neoliberal ideology that is represented in somebody like Joe Biden, and then you're turning around and conflating that with socialism. I mean, just completely deranged.
So here's what I want to tell you. Vote Republican in 2022. Do yourself a favor and ask yourself the following question. Am I better off today than I was 2 years ago? And if you are in a world of hurt 2 years ago. Because most people are not better off today. And there's a reason. Policy matters. We're all Americans. He loves his vision of America. I disagree with it, but I admire his passion. But here's where we stand. 8.6% inflation, the highest in 40 years. When you go to the grocery store for $100, you're lucky if you get a bag. Go fill up your car. You got to take a mortgage out to fill up your car.
Okay, but is that the fault of Bernie Sanders' policies, or is that the fault of multinational U.S.-based corporations, specifically like fossil fuel corporations like Exxon and Chevron, etc., that are right now price gouging the American people while they're making literally tens of billions of dollars in record profits? That's where the bulk of the inflation is going. That's where literally an outright majority, according to that great breakdown that we keep covering on from Matt Stoller, is 60% or more of inflation right now is a direct result of corporate price gouging. So you should be taking up this issue with the capitalist private sector, not with Bernie Sanders' proposed policy solutions.
What's happened here? The policies that are being pursued by my Democratic colleagues are not working. The average American is in a world of hurt. 2 million people will come across the border illegally this year. The highest in the history of the country. In December 2020, we had the lowest illegal immigrant crossings in 40 years. In April of this year, it was over 250,000. This is dangerous and it's irresponsible. And you're paying almost $800 a day to pay for an illegal immigrant child in U.S. custody. It's breaking the bank, and it's just a matter of time till some terrorist comes over here and kills us all.
What? What the fuck are you talking about? A terrorist is gonna come over the border from Mexico? I don't know if you knew this, but we kind of got a problem with domestic terrorism here in the United States, and it's not coming from immigrants or even illegal immigrants. It's coming from US citizens. It's coming from predominantly white Americans. So what are you talking about here? He's just fear-mongering to justify, cracking down on immigration into this country. If you actually wanted to improve the economic state of the country, every single indicator, all of the data that we have on this says, number one, that they are less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans, and number two, that they have massive net benefits to society as a whole, including to the economy. So the problem with your description of illegal immigration is first and foremost that we don't have an adequate process in place in order to nationalize these people, in order to give them citizenship so that they can become productive members of society. That's the main issue. It's not people coming into the United States, okay? So again, completely deranged and delusional.
If they could, because they don't see Bernie and I much different. We're Americans in their eyes. So we got a broken border, we need to fix it. Crime is rampant. This defund the police effort that you've been leading and others has taken.
Bernie Sanders, and I disagree with him on this, has never supported defund the police. So that part of this is just a straight up lie. But on top of that, we have record police budgets. We have record amounts of cops on the streets. We have record people incarcerated, 4% of the world's total population, 24% of the world's prison population. If the answer to public safety was more cops, more funding for the police, more people thrown in jail, then the United States would already right now be by far the safest country on earth, and we're not. And again, a large part of this crime wave narrative has been entirely manufactured by the police themselves, by the media, by conservative politicians and pundits like Lindsey Graham here, but we haven't seen an actual massive rise in violence over the last couple of years. That is just not true, especially when you look at specific violent crime statistics. It has not risen dramatically, and to the extent that it has, maybe that would have something to do with the massive spike in income and economic insecurity that Americans have been facing during the COVID pandemic. I wonder if that would have something to do with it. No, it must just be because people went out into the streets and protested and said defund the police, which by the way never actually happened. But he continues.
Taking a toll. I was picked up at the airport by a couple of cops and they patted me on the back. I thought I was in South Carolina. The bottom line is it's a tough time to be a cop now. Who wants to go into law enforcement? It's time to let the cops know you're not the problem, the criminal's the problem. So we got a lot of problems. Vote Republican and stop this madness. This is the most radical, costly agenda in modern American history. It's not working for you, and it needs to change. And they want to do more if they could. Vote Republican to stop packing the Supreme Court. We've worked hard to create a conservative majority. They want to increase the number of people on the Supreme Court to make it liberal again. They want to federalize elections, doing away with the voter IDs and instituting ballot harvesting. They want to abolish the Electoral College so New York and California will pick the president in perpetuity. Bottom line, it can be better. In 2019, we had the lowest poverty rate in modern history. African-American families before COVID were having the highest income in the history of following statistics. Women were doing better. We had a secure border. The Arabs and the Israelis were working together. We had a country that was moving in the right direction. We had low gas prices and jobs were abundant, and along come COVID. We can get back to that pre-COVID America, but you're never gonna get back unless you change leadership in this country in 2022.
Okay, so absolutely pathetic and hollow opening statement there from Lindsey Graham. No surprises, he didn't really have anything substantive to say in terms of how he would materially benefit average working class Americans. But if you want to look to the Trump years, which he was just glorifying as if that was the peak of the American, modern American, working class, just completely delusional. Trump's biggest accomplishment in an economic framework was giving a massive tax cut to the wealthiest people in society, the wealthiest corporations in society. So no, he's not serving the interests of average Americans. And notice again how Lindsey Graham has a lot to say about critiquing the current state of the American economy. That's all great. There's plenty to criticize there, but provides literally no solutions whatsoever to solve the problems that he's talking about there outside of just voting in Republicans, which absolutely would not help average working class people in this country. But now we get into Bernie Sanders' response to this.
What you don't hear him talking about are, in fact, the most important issues facing this country. That's what the establishment does. Lindsey is a very good and effective representative of the establishment. Does Lindsey have a concern that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people? That some 60,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor on time? I didn't hear much about that in that opening statement. Lindsey care that we have the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and that the pharmaceutical industry right now has 1,500 paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. to make sure that in some cases we pay 10 times more for the medicine that we need? Did Lindsey talk about the fact that we have in South Carolina and all over this country tens of millions of workers working for starvation wages? Did he talk about a corrupt political system in which billionaires today can start a super PAC? And I guess you have some familiarity with super PACs. They help fund your campaign. Who can spend unlimited amounts of money to elect candidates. You have the absurd situation where super PACs frequently spend more money than the candidates themselves. I didn't hear Lindsey talk about the crisis of climate change or the reality that scientists are telling us. It's not Bernie Sanders, Lindsey. This is what the best scientists in the world are telling us. We don't get our act together. The planet we're going to be leaving our kids and future generations will be becoming increasingly uninhabitable. Talking about great cities like Charleston, South Carolina, you're aware of that. Neighborhoods flooding. There are people who are thinking that not only Charleston, but Miami, New York City will be half underwater by the end of the century. You got to talk about that. You got to talk about income and wealth inequality. Do you have a concern that two people own more wealth than the bottom 42%? Do you have a concern in terms of corporate concentration of ownership? You got 3 Wall Street firms now, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, who control $20 trillion in assets. They control hundreds and hundreds of corporations throughout this country. Bottom line is we are moving toward oligarchy. And if we don't stand up and say that we need a government that represents working people and the middle class, I worry very much about the future of this country, and I hope you'll speak to some of those issues.
Okay, well, I'm sure that he won't there, and I think that that was just an absolutely perfect response from Senator Bernie Sanders. I mean, I would disagree with him on the idea that we are moving towards an oligarchy. Not really sure how you could look at a situation where 2 people have more wealth than the bottom 46% of the country, where the top 1% has more wealth than the bottom 90% of the country, and conclude that we are anything other than an oligarchy. I mean, it's my view, and I'm sure Bernie would agree with this at some level, but you cannot have a sustainable political democracy if you do not have some semblance of economic democracy that is underpinning that, and we're seeing that happen right now. I mean, this is why you need you need to have some form of democracy within an economic system. You cannot have billionaires and corporations with enough wealth to essentially buy every single politician, to use their lobbying efforts in order to get their agenda passed and the American working people's agenda absolutely demolished on a consistent basis, and expect that that is going to produce something where people feel as though they're secure in how much their vote counts. I mean, you can't have somebody like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden and the alternative option being somebody like Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis and expect that people are going to feel like they have any legitimate choice. This is why the culture war is such a big issue in this country right now, is because there is no Bernie Sanders who is leading a large party in this country and actually fighting for the economic agenda that he was pushing there in that statement. You don't have somebody who is out truly fighting for lower prescription drug prices, higher wages, bolstering unionization, addressing climate change in a meaningful way, bringing back domestic manufacturing, etc. These are all the things that, if they go unaddressed, lead to the perfect breeding ground for fascism to rise in this country. And so it's important that people understand that reality and understand that, you know, this milquetoast neoliberal centrist mindset and trying to work with Republicans who are not acting in good faith, that is never going to be enough to prevent the next Donald Trump or Donald Trump himself from taking power again. You have to materially improve people's lives. And I think that this is a perfect example of how you see a difference between a politician like Bernie Sanders versus a politician like Joe Biden, and also how you see the difference between the types of rhetoric, the things that he's actually saying at a substantive level versus what Lindsey Graham was just saying, which was basically just fear-mongering about immigrants, literally implying they're going to do some mass terrorist attack and kill us all, focusing on all of these other issues while providing absolutely no substantive policy solutions that would materially benefit working class Americans. And so you have to relentlessly push back against their ideology, against their culture war bullshit, and focus in on the types of things that Bernie was focusing in on this clip. And, in terms of how this would play out, if Bernie were to run in 2024, I don't know, watching a clip like this, I understand he's going to be a million years old. I understand at some point we got to move on from Bernie Sanders, but, he's still out there able to give a speech like this at whatever age that he is now in his 80s. I think that he would have some potential prospects in the future if he wanted to challenge Joe Biden, if he wanted to run in an open primary, if Joe Biden decides not to run, or if he, kicks the bucket before then. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but this is really just yet another reminder of what we could have had. I mean, we deserved so much better than Joe Biden versus Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. We could have had somebody who would have provided actual substantive change that would have not only benefited the American people, but also, enhanced our so-called democracy. I mean, this is, again, how we continue to spiral into the abyss of fascism if we stay on this milquetoast, neoliberal, centrist, status quo path that we are currently on.